And it's really my great pleasure of introducing you the next talk, and that will be delivered by the senior tutor in Simon K.Y.D. Hall. I can take this opportunity to speak a little bit of my personal experience. Actually, I'm not a local academic staff. I come from overseas, and when I came to Hong Kong U, I actually was not pretty much aware of residential educations in Hong Kong U, but there are two residential institutes on campus, and Simon K.Y.D. Hall is one of that. And my office happened to be just in parking lot just next to the building. So when I go down from time to time, I actually saw, hey, there was a students having an activity right there. It was a very fun activity, very exciting. And that was the starting point, even before I really stepped in my volunteer of students and hall. I already feel that atmosphere in terms of a lot of spirits and actually very interesting things in our residential college, in our residential community. And actually, I have to say, thanks, Simon K.Y.D. Hall, speaking first. So again, I'm very honored to have Kevin to share some of his experiences in today's talk. Very interesting study, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shi, for the introduction. So when you look at my title, Exploring the Challenges of Internationalization. So maybe from the word challenges, you know that I'm going to talk about residential education from a more critical perspective. I myself come from the Simon K.Y.D. Hall. Actually, I was an undergraduate there. I lived there for a number of years, and I came back to the hall as a senior resident tutor. And I am also teaching at the Center for Applied English Studies at this university, focusing on the use of English on university campus. So I'm going to look at this issue from a language perspective and at the same time, critical perspective. Even though I look at the challenges, I have to admit that I myself buy hall education a lot. I myself like traditional halls a lot. I have a great sense of belonging there, all right? So if I'm saying something negative, don't take it too, serious. I mean, take it seriously, but I mean, I'm not actually criticizing a lot. But I mean, these are the issues that we need to face, particularly for universities that are aiming to internationalize, right? I mean, this is one of the great missions, at least in the University of Hong Kong, I think, worldwide thing. So I look at, as I said, from the internationalization perspective, and I focus on, as you can see in the title, one person. And I'm going to introduce the person. That person is a unique case, and at the same time, typically presenting the two types of students, local and non-local. And also look at from the language perspective, English is a lingua franca, right? A common language used on campus. And also, Hong Kong U, as well as many universities, use English as a medium of instruction. But because of that, for countries or places like Hong Kong, using English as a second language may be a barrier, right, for integration, particularly for cultural integration, right? We've been looking at the use of language inside the classroom, but how about out of class? How about students' living environment, right? So this is where I'm looking at. So basically at university, it was taken by the time that I did a study. By the way, when you look at the website, you can see the paper that that has been uploaded. It has been published in the Language in Intercultural Communication, that journal. So if you want more detail, you can look at that journal article. So it was in 2014, I think now it's similar. So basically, we have 1/3 of the students at the university coming from outside Hong Kong, non-local students. And usually, in traditional halls, we have 1/3 of the residents from non-local background, in which 2/3 from mainland China, 1/3 from other parts of the world. We emphasize hall education a lot, but still, because of internationalization, people are saying that the local culture or traditional hall culture are fading, actually. Because of the integration with non-local students. But we are going to look at that. So in this study, I look at one student. I call him a hybrid, having both local and non-local identity. I call him Martin. Martin was born in Hong Kong, but he moved to Australia for many years before coming back to university studies and lived in Hall as a local student. So how can we differentiate local and non-local? Actually, the university is based on the kind of fee that the students paying a local tuition fee or non-local tuition fee, okay? See whether that person has a Hong Kong identity card. Yeah, but that's why, I mean, actually, the university is not exactly looking at the cultural background of the students, use the language of the students, right? And the theoretical framework that I'm using is Wenger's social theory of identity formation, all right? Maybe some of you are familiar with the community of practice, right? Yeah, community of practice from Wenger. So I'm looking at the identity of that local, non-local hybrid. Maybe I'm not going to go too in-depth on those theories, but basically these two are the theoretical framework, the elements in the framework that I'm using. The first one is identification. So basically, a person identifies himself, like who that person is, through engaging in activities, right? For example, I come from Simon K. Lee Hall, we call ourselves skiers. Right, so this is like identity through participating in hall activities. And also, you know, the orientation camp. I mean, some of you may have heard of that. I'm going to talk about the orientation camp a little bit later, all right, through the perspective of the hybrid. Imagination meaning, okay, to talk about the, engage, I mean, the sense of identity, go beyond the existing context, like in the future. Right? Alignment, that means whether we have the power to negotiate what kind of identity we are having, which is similar to negotiability. Because of time, I'm not going to go into detail. All right? So for methodology, I call it an ethnographic narrative inquiry because I've been living in the hall for a number of years. As I said, okay, before I did the study, I was an undergraduate there. And then I had lived in the hall as a resident tutor for 5 years. Actually now 7 years because the study was done 2 years ago. I use narrative inquiry, okay, because I narrate the person's experience throughout actually 2 years. I have been living with Martin for 2 years and then get to know the experience from them. It was purposive sampling, okay, I did some interviews with him and then know about his whole life through observation, field notes, informal talks, and his Facebook posts. Okay, now, let's go into looking at Martin's narrative inquiry. So this is Martin's background. As I said, he actually used Cantonese and English, both languages. But he admitted that Cantonese, he was quite fluent in spoken Cantonese. For some technical terms, he would not understand, all right? But English, he had no problem. So he came back to Hong Kong saying that somehow it is difficult to fit in because language is an issue, but he had both identity as local and non-local students. So at the beginning, he chose actually to participate in the local orientation camp. The local orientation camp, I mean, for many traditional halls, it is very intense. This is not like, you know, playing games and stuff. It is like military training. Yeah. So, but I mean, we buy this idea because we think that our students through this kind of atmosphere can learn a lot. So he chose to participate in that. But, I mean, for Martin, it was difficult because, as you can see, that's what he said, I couldn't read the Chinese initially. The floor cheers, you know, they have like cheers, yelling, in spirit. The cheers were in Chinese, so he found it difficult to learn all these cheers in this intense atmosphere. But, I mean, at the same time, he tried his best to engage in the local orientation camp because he wanted to have this local identity. And then during his whole life, this is interesting. This is from the language perspective. He said, sometimes when you speak English, you sound like you are cocky. Yeah, I understand that. Because he was boasting. I mean, people think that he was boasting, as you can see, like showing off. So he tried to avoid speaking in English because he wanted to show himself as a local homie. Yeah, so it is interesting, right? I mean, he tried to avoid the use of English because he wanted to engage in the local community. But in the later semester, the second semester actually, he got to know some non-local friends. He started to realize that, oh yeah, I could reach out. I could get to know more non-local friends. So he then understand that. He tried to disengage a little bit from the local community and then engage in the non-local community. And then he found himself liberated a little bit, okay? Free himself a little bit from oppression. And then he got to know friends, okay? But he said, my friends usually go with friends who are non-local. Because I asked him, okay, are you considering yourself a local or non-local now? At different points. He said it was difficult to determine, okay? It was interesting, like you can see in the middle. I was born in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is my hometown, and I would like to be identified with the place of being in Hong Kong. It is kind of sad to feel outcast by your own people. It's something hard to deal with. So you see, he had some kind of identity conflict. And it was also in between the disengagement and engagement of the local community. And then later in the second year, I called him a hybrid because he understood understood the relationship between local and non-local students, the identities of both. So he tried to integrate the two communities, but he had some challenges, and he said, me and my friend really wanted to integrate local and non-local students. I would say it was my first agenda, but we ran into problems. The whole association won't prioritize integration between local and non-local. They want the local and local to be more integrated first, before they want to integrate with the non-local students. But by the time it happens, the non-local already felt segregated. Right? Actually, I can tell you, quite a lot of halls, as I know, to my knowledge, do not or may not have integrated local and local orientation camp. Right? At least for my halls, I'm in KYD Hall, we have a local orientation, which is happening now. We have 10 days, 2 more days to go. And then after that, we have a non-local orientation camp. Right? So we can see, at the beginning, we are already segregating the two. But we find it quite difficult to have to run one orientation camp for both communities, because the use of language can be an issue. So this is his comment actually in a later interview. He said, the locals' English proficiency is not that high. I'm not being arrogant, but it's a fact. They're not so proficient, and due to that, obviously you feel reluctant to speak out. That is normal, right? When you are not so familiar, when you do not speak that language as first language, or you're not competent in that language, you try to avoid that. And quite a lot of students actually try to stay in their comfort zone by speaking in their first language, which is understandable. Actually, I talked to quite a lot of students, and I said, okay, you have non-local students here. Why don't you speak in English? Why do you stick to Cantonese? And some of them said, oh, I'm so tired. I've been speaking in English for the whole day in class. Coming back to I want to have a rest. I want to stick to my first language, right? Which is understandable. And actually talking about engagement in the hall teams, as Rainbow just talked about, we have like softball teams, a lot of different teams. We welcome, of course, non-local students to join, but it runs into the problem. Because, for non-local students, sometimes they may be, local students may be speaking in English to them, right? But, for 1 or 2 sentences, if you are not having a very interesting topic to talk about, then they switch to their own community, local community, and they, talking about gossips and stuff, right? Yeah, the non-local students will then feel isolated, right? That may be a problem. So he commented at the end that hall may not be a very good environment to use English, okay? Because people tend to speak Cantonese. I think the issue is the hall is dominated by Cantonese-speaking local students. That is an issue. So we can see, from his identity change, we have a number of issues that we can observe. This study has problematized the use of English as lingua franca in a multicultural and multilingual English medium university. And then I looked at the students' living environment, all right? And somehow it may not be very beneficial for the use of English in an out-of-class context like students' residence. At the same time, even though we're encouraging the use of English on campus, and then we are promoting English as lingua franca on campus. Are we doing that actually in out-of-class contexts? Are we actually using language to promote cultural integration, or is it actually segregation? Because students may be avoiding using English in out-of-class contexts. What is the meaning of true internationalization? Should we listen to the students' voice? Actually, quite a lot of students may not have a full understanding, or they may not buy the idea of internationalization out of class. I mean, they know the importance, but they may not be very happy with their local tradition taken away because of catering to the internationalization as a university mission. So what I've observed from this quote, we may not simply put the number of students, non-local students, into a community and say, okay, we are internationalizing a university. But if they actually work out what is happening in different contexts, in class, out of class, and especially students' residents, this is true internationalization, that students may really feel the need and that they are really benefiting from internationalization. And the use of language is one of the things that we need to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yes, you pointed out something that we have been always thinking about, and I think a lot of the wardens and masters right here has been always trying very hard, to work toward these directions. But sometimes we need to know and need to have someone to tell us what to do, which directions actually will be available. Thank you very much. So I'd like to invite audience for questions.
Perhaps the experience of what Richie and St. John's is doing might be of help. St. John's now require non-local students and non-local locals participate in whole orientation with locals. And the orientation is bilingual. But we do have some funny situations. For example, this year, we had a girl on day one started crying. She was non-local, a Korean. And the reason was because we had to climb up the mountain and she could put on her makeup. And that's a really interesting dynamic.
Please. I'm sorry, Kevin, do you want to respond to this?
Thanks for sharing.
Yes, hello. I'm from Singapore. We have a slightly different problem. I think, what you said really resonates because in our hall systems, we also have a lot of international students. And it's not so much about returning locals, who have a problem with language, but rather, in Singapore, we speak this very odd pidgin English called Singlish, and it's a hodgepodge of English, Chinese dialects, Malay, Hokkien, because Eric is Singaporean, so he knows. And basically, it is divisive in the sense that, for a lot of the international students, they don't quite understand, the local students. And we sort of struggle because in our orientation, we have policies, of inclusiveness so that they do not, chant or have cheers in Hokkien or, other non-English dialects and language. So I think, for us, it's really how do we overcome this? How do we embrace the international students, but at the same time, give the local students their identity? Because a lot of them are very dogged, about these legacies, and they feel it's that kind of cultural identity, and if you make them depart from that, they feel very offended, and I think it's a struggle for us, as masters and so on. How do we bridge that gap while still, embracing and welcoming, the melting pot of cultures? So I guess that's the question I toss to everyone because, we're not too sure how to resolve it at this point in time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think, yes, this can be an issue in a place where English is used as first language, right? It can be more challenging, like Hong Kong, using English as a second language, because the students actually are saying that, okay, so if I go into an English-speaking country as an exchange student, I fit into that culture. I speak English with the students there, right? But people coming to Hong Kong, the host have to cater to the guests and switch our language, okay? And then the students will find it, challenging. Okay, that can be the issue. I think that, to increase students' English proficiency is a very important thing that we need to do, right? But I think, the students are very busy. Even though, our Center for Applied English Studies, have a lot of activities for them, local students, particularly those busy living at a hall may not have time to join these activities to enhance their English proficiency, right? So what I'm saying is, students first have to understand the importance of internationalization, and they have to go hand in hand with the university, actually, to go for that goal, all right, to try to integrate with non-local students.
Any other questions?
All right.
Oh, yeah, can we let the lady please?
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
As a non-local student who lived in hall, I've never get it. There's one thing that I never get it is that how could senior student yell at a junior student? Because like the first time I saw it, I was freaked out. I was in my room and I saw like the floor was shaking and there's a senior scolding the junior students. I always wanted to ask someone who had a very good experience in the hall, like why did that happen and how could that happen? Because for me, it's kind of bullying. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for asking that question. Long story if I have to explain that tradition. But I mean, basically, it is just during the orientation camp, I have to say, for most of the traditional halls, not through the whole hall life. It would be, a nightmare, right? The students living in the hall through the year being yelled at. But we are actually trying to create, how should I put that? An atmosphere with adversity so that the students, freshmen, actually can be more united in hardship, in a very tough environment. Yeah. Yes, I'm serious. But later, during the orientation camp, we usually create a more comfortable, harmonious environment, and then let them feel that, okay, the senior actually and the junior can be integrated. We are breaking the barrier. Okay, so it is not like through the whole life or through the whole camp. Usually at the end of the whole camp, the atmosphere changed, okay, to become more harmonious, right? I'm not sure whether I should say more. Long story, as I said. Yeah.
I think that's good. No, let me have the last question.
Kevin, this is just a suggestion. Perhaps it will help all of us.
Right.
I'm thinking that you give us a very good scenario, which is very clear, and the message is very clear. But don't you think that it's about time that we start to quantify the situation, just like the Macau they did, that we should do a survey and put the statistics there. Once people see the statistics, they know that it's alarming, it speaks for itself. So that it doesn't mean like maybe one person, maybe it could be a student sharing his experience. So somebody might argue that it's just subjective and not objective. So I suggest that it's about time that we could go for more statistical, quantify the information, collect data from the students and see their view and their opinion. And then we can put it to the authorities for action if there are action to be taken. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very good, anything to respond to.
This is a good suggestion. We can look at that from a more quantitative perspective. I've chosen to look at it from a more qualitative perspective because, when we look at statistics, there are some in that issues that we are missing, right? So actually I'm using that hybrid, as illustrating example together with my observation and experience, right? But of course, maybe a mixed method study would help, right? Together with statistics and qualitative data. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think your study actually served a really good platform. And as you actually said, I think it could be more of this type of study to provide more of this information altogether. So I think more of the numbers will be great, and this is a really good platform. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending the sections, and please allow me to invite you to give applause to Kevin Scott. Thank you very much.
As a token of our thanks, we'd like to again ask Dr. Shi to present the speaker with a souvenir.